Welcome to the Cyber Rants Podcast, where we're all about sharing the forbidden secrets and slightly embellished truths about corporate cybersecurity programs. We're ranting, we're raving, and we're telling you the stuff that nobody talks about on their fancy website and trade show giveaways, all to protect you from cybersecurity criminals. And now, here's your hosts, Mike Rotondo, Zach Fuller, and Lauro Chavez.
Hello and welcome to the Cyber Rants Podcast. This is your co-host, Zach Fuller, joined by Mike Rotondo and Lauro Chavez. Today we have what I think is a good topic. Something that comes up a lot is cloud migration, right? A lot of organizations moving to cloud, and there are a lot of considerations that come with that and some myths we want to dispel as well. So before we do that, Mike, why don't you kick us off with the news?
Good morning and welcome to the news. FBI, APTs actively exploiting Fortinet and VPN security holes. This has been going on for a while, but there's an advanced persistent threat, nation-state actor that is actively exploiting known security vulnerabilities in Fortinet and FortiOS cybersecurity operating system. So if you've got that, get it patched. There's multiple CVEs attached to that. The evolution and rise of the Abaddon ransomware as a service. There's a ransomware as a service that started back in February 2020 called Abaddon. It's continued to expand. It's tied to the Russians. So, beware that they're actually they're now service companies like doing ransomware. So life is good, right? A hacker set up fake security firm to target security experts. A North Korean government-backed campaign targeting cybersecurity research with malware has reemerged with new tactics in their arsenal as part of a fresh social engineering attack. They set up a fake security company called Secure Elite and a slew of social media accounts across Twitter and LinkedIn in an attempt to trick unsuspecting researchers into visiting the company's booby-trapped website. That was nice of them. Anomalous surge in DNS queries not in Microsoft Cloud off the web last week. So, going back to talking about our cloud this week, we had basically surge in DNS queries from across the globe targeting a set of domains hosted on Azure. Knocked it offline, which I'm sure was an inconvenience for just about everybody. Hackers targeting professionals with more eggs malware via LinkedIn job offers. There's a new spear phishing campaign in targeting professionals on LinkedIn with weaponized job offers in an attempt to infect targets with sophisticated backdoor Trojans called more eggs. To increase the odds of success, the phishing lures take advantage of malicious zip archive files that have information on the jobs. I can also, with an unconfirmed report, I had heard that LinkedIn had also been hacked recently, along with Facebook. Facebook 533 million records, and LinkedIn as well. Firmware attacks, a gray area in cybersecurity of organizations. This is always something that is quite often overlooked. According to Microsoft, they revealed that 80% of enterprises were victims of at least one firmware attack in the past 2 years. The study showed that only 29% of targeted organizations have allocated budgets to protect firmware. So that's something to think about. Inside the ransomware campaigns targeting Exchange servers, this is just more about the whole thing that came out back in March, but they're using 0 days. And in the week ending March 30th, the number of attacks involving the Exchange server flaws have tripled to more than 50,000 around the world. It's an interesting read. I definitely recommend you check it out. The trusted internet. Who governs who gets to buy spyware from surveillance software companies? So this is kind of an interesting one. It's when hackers get hacked, that's when secrets get uncovered. July 5th of 2020, an Italian-based surveillance technology company released 400 gigabytes of torrent file with internal documents, source code, and emails to the public, including the company's client list of almost 60 customers. Include countries such as Sudan, Kazakhstan, Saudi Arabia. The leaked documents strongly implied that the Southeast Asian region government agencies from Singapore, Thailand, and Malaysia had purchased their most advanced spyware, referred to as remote control systems, and were using these against targets. So it's an interesting dark web consideration of how governments are actually doing this stuff. Security falls short in rapid COVID cloud migration. We're going to talk about this in a little bit, but what we're seeing is that as COVID hit, many companies tried to move their infrastructure to the cloud quickly, and they saw security incidents rise, some of them as much as 400%. So that's definitely a concern. And there's a new Office 365 phishing campaign using publicly hosted JavaScript out there. So be really careful with your email on Office 365. Don't click on anything you're not sure about. Tech support scammers lure victims with fake antivirus billing emails. This is more for your home users, but they're sending out fake bills, asking you to click on it and pay your balance. So don't click on that. lastly, or one of the last ones is that I saw, this is kind of concerns. Armed conflict draws closer as state-backed cybersecurity attacks intensify. There's actually a study called Nation State Cyber Conflict and the Web of Profit that was done by an English university. It claimed that 100% increase in significant state-based attacks between 2017 and 2020, and an average of over 10 publicly attributed attacks per month in 2020 alone. 50% featured surveillance tools, 14% were focused on damage or destruction. You might remember the Ukrainian power grid, while more than 40% had a physical and digital component. So cyber is moving into a very dark place. It's also claimed that 10 to 15% of dark web vendor sales now go to atypical purchasers like state-backed APTs. I added this one simply because of our political reason that we're in here. Our evil ransomware now changes password to auto login in safe mode. Guess what they change it to? D-Trump forever. The ransomware configures following registry values so that Windows will automatically log in with the new account information. So there you go. That's the headlines. Laurel?
That was great. At least you always know that some of these individuals have somewhat of a sense of humor at times. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, interesting stuff, Mike. Thanks for that. For exploitation this week, there's a couple things I'll talk about. One of them is done by the Google security research team. It's on the Linux kernel 5.4, and it exploits the Bluetooth zero-click remote code execution capability. It's there. It's what you'd expect from Google research team, Andy Nguyen and that team. They just wrote this in C. It's elegant. So they did a POC, and they have the data there. They estimate the accuracy or the success rate rather at about 80%.
Jeez.
And so they were able to do this on a Mac, which is really cool. So check that out. Certainly something to be aware of for in proximity attacks for more of your physical stuff like that, which is pretty neat as well. But I think the interesting one is kind of just been by one of the independents that was shut out there was for the Rockstar service. There's an insecure file permission on how Rockstar service installs if you're using it for online play on your PC and stuff. And so for those of you who are not Rockstar fans, you may have heard of Grand Theft Auto. So this is if you've got everybody who's playing GTA 5. And so this is an authenticated vulnerability, so you have to already have an account on a local PC in order for this attack to work. It's a clever attack, no doubt about that, but it certainly punches in the gut of a lot of everybody's favorite game. So I'm a big fan of GTA 5. I used to play GTA 1 back in 1997 and play GTA London along with it. So if you've not heard of those and you might not know what a Voodoo 1 by 3DFX is or what overclocking a Pentium 2 is like. But in any case.
Are those on the Wii?
What was that?
Are those on the Wii?
On the Wii? No. I think that's more of like maybe it was Nintendo DS or something. I don't know.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, my two megabit on board Voodoo 1. It was the most amazing thing at the time. Anyways, GTA has come a long way. Anyways, so this is a really cool exploit that they brought out, I thought. But that's pretty much it. Those two for this week that are of interest. Everything else is in POC and on random items. So always make sure you take a look at what your attack surface looks like and then compare that to what you're seeing in the exploit world. Zach, turn it back over to you.
All right. Well, thank you both. Interesting stuff happening and a little bit nerve-wracking, but hey, that's the business we're in. So, there's going back to cloud migration, right? There are a tremendous amount of benefits to this. We see a lot of organizations moving to the cloud, but there are also downsides. And I think one of the myths that I want to dispel right off the bat is the myth that is catching a lot of companies off guard. Right. And this myth is the idea that if you move to the cloud, you're more secure or you're automatically secure. Right. And the cloud, of course, is just somebody else's computer. Right. So same security considerations apply. But what are your recommendations, your thoughts? What are you seeing out there in the wild as far as cloud migrations and where people are screwing it up?
There's a myriad of places they could screw it up. But primarily what I see is even at the beginning of the negotiation of the contract of who actually owns the security and what. There's a misconception out there, and hopefully it's going away to a certain extent, but that automatically by moving things to the cloud, I'm safe. And that the cloud provider will take care of all my security, will take care of all my requirements, all my, passwords, all my patching, that sort of thing. And that is not the case. Depending on the level of cloud service that you have, there is some of that. But if, you're just buying, for lack of a better term, bare steel in the cloud, and then you're putting your infrastructure on it, that's all you. Right, they'll take care of the part of it, but you have to still maintain a lot of your security measures and your patching and everything else. So it's a matter of being sure from the beginning what you're getting, and I think that's just we can start with step one, and then it goes from there.
Exactly. I think you mentioned it. You on the head when you said that they take care of requirements for you. That should be right. The first step, right? We talked about diagrams a couple episodes ago, and the stuff that you're trying to migrate, you should have diagrams on, and you should certainly have requirements kind of fully measured out, so that you understand what it is you're trying to accomplish once you get your technologies in the cloud, and make sure that what service levels that you've committed to from a price perspective are going to meet those requirements, right? I mean, that's just like you said, that's rule number one. And I think there's a lot of assumptions like, oh, we can just deploy this. And we tested a lot of customers from a technical assessment perspective that have, had vulnerabilities that were closed on-prem, and then when they migrated, some of those changes didn't follow. Right. And so because it's in their process as a mature organization to include pen tests upon changes, we were able to identify those weaknesses were now kind of showing up again. And so they realized, that just moving your code up there isn't going to also take all the nice configs that you've done and in place, behind application firewall profiles that you may have that aren't consistent in AWS or Azure or someplace else software. Right? It doesn't matter. So that requirements on what you have today, understanding what you have today and how that's going to translate is critical stuff.
The other thing that comes to mind too is that, monitoring and reporting and auditing and logging, that's an add-on in a lot of cloud services. That's not an automatic. Right, they're going to take care of the perimeter, and they're going to take care of their piece. But monitoring your application, that's up to you. You have to be able to configure that piece. You have to configure the alerts. You have to configure the process. You have to configure, all of that sort of thing, and add those pieces into the system. Just because an application sits in the cloud doesn't mean Amazon or Azure or Google or whoever is taking care of it for you. And so that's the next step down the road, is that people forget that they have to actually add those pieces in. It's just a fault in security. Yeah. And, and code. Yeah. I mean, code doesn't necessarily work the same in the cloud as it does on-prem either. Right. I mean, don't we see differences in that as well?
Always. There's a lot of tweaking that needs to be done for, changing some of this, right? It's not a simple just a copy pasta, right? If you will, there's some things there that you have to do. And again, if you don't understand what your infrastructure looks like today, it makes it more difficult challenge, I think, to make that smooth transition. And like we keep saying, right, there's a lot of things that I think organizations assume that is going to just be included in the package. And it may be, right? Some things may be included. That doesn't mean you don't need to go in and configure the settings. So, cloud doesn't mean hands off. You know what I mean? There's still, through the snap-ins and everything else, there's still management you need to perform. And, us engineers had a saying back in the day called RTFM. And I'm not going to, for those that know, no. But in any case, right, they have best practice guides that I think a lot of technologists refuse to read or research. So do your homework, because all these vendors, they put out a best practices to cybersecurity, and in that is a checklist. A lot of them call it that, right? And you'll be able to go through that and find, what it is that you need to do and how you need to go through that. And what I think is interesting is to bring up one. And again, I don't really like to talk about the brands, but if you look at AWS security checklist, which I think is pretty funny, they talk about making sure that you have an incident response plan. and making sure that you're making run books and stuff. So they're like, look, we're not going to do this for you. Like, these are things, it's almost like they don't iron clothes while on body. Have you ever noticed that? I don't know how many people iron anymore, right? But for us military folk, like we know what it's like to iron, right? And so, that sticker was on the iron, right? It's like, because somebody did that. And so, in the beginning, AWS didn't have the security checklist, but everybody was getting hacked, and they're like, "What? Why aren't you guys?" And they're like, "What do you mean?" Like, that was in the terms of service. Like, you're supposed to read that part. Anyway, so they've made a checklist now so that you can consume it and understand what things you need to have in place to better reduce the risk you're going to have while performing and conducting activities with your technologies and business software in these environments. Super critical to read this documents.
That's an excellent point.
Yeah, can't enforce that enough. Like, read the manual. It's there for you, right? I mean, if we put it on Wikipedia, more people would read it, but because you got to go dig for it on, wherever, it makes it like so much harder to understand. But, when we we've been asked recently to do a lot of these reviews, and, here's the thing is that everybody has a way that they're going to deploy these technologies in these online, online vendors. And so the best thing that we do as well to practice this is with our customers that we're taking care of is that we read the manuals, right? And we look at the consoles and scroll through the settings and kind of evaluate what opportunities we have in the licensing kit that's given to the organization. It's like, what do you have? Like, go in there and look. Like, what options do you have? Yeah, you've got some logging capabilities, but you've got to enable some other things. And like you said, Mike, some things you have to pay for, like that really good telemetry that they have for the compliance area is, that might be an additional add-on you might want to pay for, right? So you want to look at that, but you may also, if you get a tour of it as an example, or tour of some of these capabilities with the reps, then you may be surprised or watch some videos, right? Or you may be surprised at the capabilities you get. But if you don't do that research and understanding requirements, it's just going to be a big headache for you.
I was going to say, I think the value of the cloud is that it enables you to do whatever you want. The problem is it enables you to do whatever you want. There's no guardrails, right?
Touche, absolutely.
Yeah. So, that's a big concern right there. I mean, and people don't read the manual. And a lot of times these migrations are done out of desperation because we're cutting staff. We need to migrate everything in cloud because there's a belief in the financial offices that we're going to save all this money, X percent. In reality, by doing it in a hurry, you're creating issues where you have 400% increase in incidents because you haven't taken the due diligence and due care. Cloud migration is not a 30-day migration. It is a well planned out 12 to 18 month migration if you're moving your entire infrastructure. And to do it while cutting staff, that's just not a good idea.
Yeah, no, you nailed it, Mike. Here's the thing: is it's cheaper to a lot of individuals say it's cheaper, especially in something like COVID, right, where we have a remote workforce. And it's like, oh, we got metal. We've got to buy VPN now to access this stuff, and it makes it more complicated, more expensive. It's probably in those cases cheaper to migrate things to the cloud, and then just have everybody access it through the portal. You know what I mean? And then there's no need to manage more infrastructure devices, right? And so it's the perfect storm. And that remote, that, like you said, at haste, like, what are we going to do? We don't have, X amount of dollars to spend on these updated VPN licenses and to get everybody, updated on this. Let's move this stuff to the cloud, right?
Yeah.
Let's say I'm a business leader that just went through kind of a hasty cloud migration, so to speak, and I want to understand where I stand in terms of security with this migration in this new environment. What recommendations would you give to me or somebody in that situation?
First off, you don't come on the show and ask questions like that in a random stranger. You have to approach us the appropriate manner. And second, did you do your diagrams? That's what I'm going to ask you. Do you have diagrams?
I did my diagrams.
You had your diagrams.
I did. They're in crayon on a napkin, but I did my diagrams.
I'm not here to judge. Hey, the muffler works. I'm just checking to make sure the smog system works. I don't care what color your car is or if the door handle's there. You know what I mean? Hey, that's fine if it's there. We've got as long as we have a detailed understanding of what your migration looks like, then that's step one, right? And step two is that Have you read the manual? Did you read the manual? Did you read the best practices for your deployment?
Well, I was hoping you guys would do that.
Well, I mean, we can. I mean, that's fine. That's fine. We can do that for you. Did you lock down your global admin for that? Did you give everybody just administrative access so that?
Well, we're working on that.
You didn't have to figure out how for the identity access management. Okay, there's a lot of questions, right? But a lot of these questions, I think I could just pass off. We could save some time. I could just pass you this checklist here, and you can read it.
So look through the checklist. What about pen testing?
That's always a smart idea. Mike, I don't know. What do you think? Should we pen? I mean, he just interrupted our show and started talking about what advice would we give him. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, I think the first thing is a pen test, but the other thing that you need to look at is the process and procedures, right? Have you translated your processes that are internal for your bare metal to cloud processes?
Yeah. Did you?
Yeah.
Did you do that?
Well, I'll have to check.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. I'll get back to you. Make sure you save that napkin. I don't care if it's got a drink stain on it.
Well, thank you guys
like
for the
dirty
guidance.
olives. Dirty olives and cigars. Your diagram.
We laugh, but this is a conversation, of course, we have regularly, right, with organizations that just need the guidance. They need the support.
Yeah.
Right. We're maybe inflating it a bit, but yeah, I mean, all good considerations. I'm sorry, what was that?
Yeah, we certainly don't approach clients in the same manner. I just, we're sort of more professional. No, that's the fun of podcasting, right?
It's all good fun. Yeah, no, we get a lot of questions. I would try to bring those scenarios up in kind of the worst case scenario, right? And hopefully, the listeners out there are in a better spot, right? But we can always learn from these situations that can and will happen. But we are coming up on time. Any final thoughts, ideas, words of wisdom to share?
Yeah. Remember, don't forget, and read the manual. Read the manual. Read the manual.
Anything that is worth doing slowly and properly. Don't rush when you're getting into this stuff. There are emergencies. Acting in a matter that you see as an emergency without careful consideration of all the all the risks will create problems in the long term. So
very well said. Very well said. And I'm sorry for interrupting your show, Laurel.
That's fine. I don't know who you are still. Who are you?
It won't happen again, I promise.
Zach, who's this person?
I'm just calling in, just a random call in, asking questions. But well, thank you.
First time caller.
Do I win anything? Do I get some? Was I like the 100th caller?
You didn't use the catchphrase that pays, so I'm sorry.
Hey, look, you got your crayons and your napkin with the drink stain and diagram. That's all you get.
And some free advice.
There you go.
Well, thank you. And thank you, everyone, for listening. Hope you enjoyed the show. Hope you found some information that was valuable. And if you did, go ahead and give us a rating or subscribe to the channel. And we'd love to hear your comments, feedback, ideas for future episodes. Thanks a lot and have a great day.
Pick up your copy of the CyberRants book on Amazon today. And if you're looking to take your cybersecurity program to the next level, visit us online at www.silentsector.com. Join us next time for another edition of the CyberRants podcast.